acquisition of Team Sorcerers here, and welcome back to What If Wednesday. And we've got another suggestion. This one is from Joseph Dean, and he asks, what if Pitbull, Blade and Trident returned for Series 4? Now, of course, Blade could have come back as Blade's big brother, and Trident could have come back, but for different reasons they seemed to drop at the last minute, which meant that Suicidal Tendencies and Centurion ended up being seeded. And of course, the Pitbull team had no desire to return after Series 3, but obviously we're here to explore what if they did. Well, I've been trying to do a bit of digging before doing this, and originally, of course, Blade's big brother, the successor to Blade, would have been seeded 14th and Trident 16th. And it was also explained, when I looked it up on the wiki, that Spawn of Scudder would eventually be included in the top 16 after it was confirmed Pitbull would not be entering, meaning that based on the original seeding, Spawn of Scudder would have been seeded 17th if Pitbull did return, which would mean that Stinger would also not be seeded, as well as Centurion and Suicidal Tendencies. So for this scenario, this is how I've lined up the 32 seeds. Obviously the top 9 doesn't change. I'm not going to cover that. I mean, if you're familiar with Robot Wars, the 4th Wars, you'll know what it is already. So 10th would have been Pitbull, which seems to be, or it seems to be implied that it would have been seeded 10th. So Wild Thing would still be 11th, Evil Weaver would still be 12th, and Gravedigger would still be 13th, and obviously Blade's big brother would have been 14th, and Bigger Brother 15th, Trident 16th. So again, Spawn of Scudder would have probably been 17th if this is the case, so the following would be 18 Wheelie Big Cheese, 19 Kilohertz, 10 King B3, 20 King B3, 21 Cerberus, 22 Pussycat, 23 Agrabot 2, 24 Deator, 25 Exterminator, 26 Mortis, 27 Berserk 2, 28 Shadow of Napalm, 29 Plunderbird 4, 30 Sacromalot, 31 Weldor 2, and 32 Dreadnought XP1. Now, there'll be some minor switches around, so the 31st seed, which is Weldor, will be in the same heat as Bigger Brother. Because it's 15th, it would be in heat H, and of course the 32nd seed, which would be Dreadnought, would be in Trident's heat, so that would be heat I. And also we're going to try and keep Stinger, Centurion and Suicidal Tendencies in the sort of in the original heats, but also place them in the heats where our 3 new seeds, Pitbull, Trident and Blade's big brother, would be. So in this case, Suicidal Tendencies and Killertron would join Pitbull, and we're going to do what I did before and just chop out robots who lost in the first round or would be least likely to qualify. So in this case it would be Rick, Stinger and Bulldog breed would join Blade's big brother, so Spikosaurus isn't there, but would still probably compete in the Pitbull Warrior Tournament and the Northern Annihilator, and then Centurion and Splinter would join Trident. I know in the Fourth Wars Centurion lost in round 1, but since it was then chosen as a seed, seeing as Trident, Blade's big brother, didn't go through, it would have probably qualified over Small Talk. So that's how we're going to line it up. Otherwise, everyone stays in the same battles, and the heats try and remain the same as much as possible to match the real timeline. So, hopefully you guys followed all of that. So, basically, in this situation, Chaos 2 and Spawn of Scudder are in the same heat with their respective robots. So, round 1, Chaos 2 and Atomic beat Indefatigable. In Heat A, well, Spawn of Scudder and Nightmare beat Banshee. So then round 2, Chaos 2 would face Nightmare and beat it, and Spawn of Scudder would face Atomic. And Atomic might have a difficult time trying to flip Spawn of Scudder over, and I feel like the flipping blade would come off, which would give Spawn of Scudder the ability to fight back, and it does so and goes through, which means the two seeds meet in the heat final, and Chaos 2 just doesn't have too much trouble with Spawn of Scudder. I mean, it might lose to a judge's decision, but ultimately Chaos 2 would go through. So Heat B, Razor and Kilohertz are in the same heat. So Razor and Robo Chicken beat Velociriptor, and Kilohertz and Eric beat Destructibobble. So Razor would face Eric, Kilohertz would face Robo Chicken. Now, despite Eric being an awkward shape for Razor, I think Razor would still prevail and find a way to do significant damage to Eric. And as for Kilohertz, I know it does break down here, but I'm not too sure whether or not that was due to too much shoving from Splinter in the original timeline. It's hard to say, and this is a tough one to call. Like, either Robo Chicken would use its flipper to flip Kilohertz over, or Kilohertz would just ram it a lot of the time, get the axe stuck in. So this is a difficult one to call, but I don't think it matters, because either of them would just lose to Razor in the heat final. So there we go. Razor would actually go through to the semi-finals for the first time here. In Heat C, Firestorm and Cerberus are in the same heat. Firestorm and Scar, or should I say the Morgue, go through, while VMAX and Terrible go through as well. Then VMAX and Firestorm fight each other, while the Morgue and Terrible face off. But I feel like chances are Firestorm would more likely beat VMAX here, in the mirror match, so to speak. And in the other one, Terrible seems to be having some sort of problems, like it did against Razorblade in the original timeline. So the Morgue would more likely win this one, and then the heat final plays out the same way it did in the original timeline. So then we move on to Heat D, Stegs 2 heat, and this time Agrabot 2 is in this one. So Steg 2 and Crusader 2 beat Kronos, Agrabah 2 and Saw Point beat Oblivion, then round 2, Steg 2 would beat Saw Point, I think. Whereas Crusader 2 is more likely going to beat Agrabah 2. So Crusader 2 and Steg meet again in the heat final. Steg 2 seems to be having those minor problems, but they don't seem to be that much of an issue. Yeah, despite the problems, I feel like Steg 2 would probably still win, most likely. I mean, yeah, Crusader 2 would probably push Steg 2 around, but I don't think it would be able to flip it over. But yeah, Steg 2 would still be the more effective. So then Heat E, 101's heat, and this time it's joined by Exterminator, so the winners being 101, Dominator 2, Exterminator and Judge Shred 2. Then in the next round, 101 would more than likely beat Judge Shred 2, whereas in a clash of the axes, Dominator 2 would beat Exterminator. Then the heat final plays out the same way, with Dominator 2 winning. So Heat F, we've still got Gemini here in this bit. So Gemini and Tornado win their fights. Oh yeah, and they're joined by Diator, who still gets flipped by Ming 2. So then Gemini and Bolt from the Blue would face off against each other, and this could be a bit tricky for Gemini. I feel like it would have some problems trying to get in underneath Bolt from the Blue, while Bolt from the Blue could flip Gemini quite easily. And I think because of that, Bolt from the Blue would win, even if it's for a judge's decision. Meanwhile, Tornado would beat Ming 2, and then Tornado would meet Bolt from the Blue in the heat final. I feel like Bolt from the Blue would struggle a bit. I mean, yes, it would try and flip Tornado a few times, but it probably wouldn't get to a point where it would just turn over. And Tornado would just keep ramming it, even get behind and ram it some more. Yeah, Tornado just straight up still wins that heat. So Heat G, Gravedigger's heat, but this time Gravedigger is joined by Plunderbird 4. So yeah, Thermidor 2 and Chronic beat Gravedigger, while Plunderbird 4 and Vercingetorix beat Fatboy Tin. Vercingetorix would then face Chronic 2, I think. I don't think Chronic would be able to get Vercingetorix over, plus its axe could actually do some significant damage, and Vercingetorix would go through to the heat final for the first time ever. Meanwhile, there's a rematch between Plunderbird and Thermidor 2, but unfortunately, the International Wreck Crew aren't able to get revenge. Because, for one, there is that track problem, plus they don't have a Shriek, despite the song that they would sing in Extreme 1. So, yeah, Plunderbird would get turned on its side and eliminated, and Thermidor and Vercingetorix would meet in the heat final, and despite Vercingetorix being improved, Thermidor 2's just better. Then again, it might not be able to flip Vercingetorix that easily, whereas the lifting arm could actually tip it upside down. I mean, even though Thermidor could run both ways up, the Series 4 version can't really get back up. So, yeah, this would be a surprising turn of events. I mean, I thought this would be quite an easy win for Thermidor, but I'm not so sure. So in this case, Vercingetorix goes through to the semi-finals. So Heat 15, Bigger Brothers Heat, and like I said, it's joined by Weldor 2, so yeah, Bigger Brother and Hammer and Tong go through, while a Little Fly and Something beat Weldor 2. Now it's hard to say who would face whom here. As I know, Bigger Brother does have this gas leak, but I feel like it would beat Something quite easily, but I'm not so sure about Little Fly. I mean, it's hard to say when the gas leak happens. I mean, I can't remember if it was working at all in the original timeline against Bulldog Breed. But I feel like Bigger Brother would still probably win, because I'm not sure the blade would be that damaging. So yeah, Bigger Brother would more than likely beat either of them. And Hammer and Tong would beat either of them, so it shouldn't be an issue. So they meet again in the Heat final, and yeah, Bigger Brother just flips Hammer and Tong over quite quickly and goes through to the semi-finals yet again. So then Heat I, Trident's heat, and is joined by Dreadnought XP1. So yeah, Trident is up against Centurion and Splinter, like I said. Now I don't know if it would be the same Trident or whether it's one that has a Shriek of some kind. But based on the design, they'd probably try and find a way to make it run upside down, or have some sort of side spikes to self-right, just like Exterminator. But either way, I don't really see Centurion going through here. I think Splinter and Trident would beat Centurion quite easily. Then Dreadnought's fight, that plays out the same way with Dreadnought and Dark Destroyer 2 going through. So Trident would then go on to face Dark Destroyer 2 and would beat it quite easily, because there's not much weaponry on Dark Destroyer 2. Dreadnought at this point seems to have an issue, like with steering. One of the wheels seems to be jammed up, but either way, Splinter beats it quite easily, then goes through to face Trident again in the Heat final. Now I don't know how good Trident's axe would be by this stage, but I don't know if it would do significant damage to Splinter, but in any case, Splinter would more likely win and go through to the semi-finals still. So then Heat J will to Blade's Big Brother's Heat, and is joined by Sacromalot. Now, Blade's Big Brother would probably be similar in design to Blade, but yeah, bearing in mind, I'm not sure what the concept would have been, but chances are it would have been an invertible machine, just to make up for the fact that it got flipped by Beast of Bodmin in Series 3, and the lawnmower blades would probably be replaced by multiple circular saws. So anyway, it's up against Stinger and Bulldog Breed, but I don't know how effective these blades are. It depends what kind of saw blade it is, I guess, but I don't think it would have been a carbon copy of Pussycat's blade. I mean, it would be difficult to do anything to Stinger. Maybe it would scratch Bulldog Breed too, but I feel like Bulldog Breed would flip Blade on its side and just leave it there. That's probably what would happen. But otherwise, it's unlikely that a Blade's big brother would go through here. And then, of course, Reactor and Sacromalot just beat Scorpion. Now, I'm not sure who'd face who. I guess Bulldog Breed would face Sacromalot, just so it still faces a seed here, whereas Stinger would face Reactor. There's not much Reactor can do against Stinger anyway, so Stinger would just beat it for a judge's decision, and Sacromalot is no match for Bulldog Breed despite the Shriek neck. So yeah, just be tipped over too easily, shoved around. Bulldog Breed goes through, and the heat final plays out the same way, and Stinger still goes through. So then the next heat, Heat K, that's Evil Weevil's heat, and is joined by Shadow of Napalm this time. So Evil Weevil's batteries die, Mousetrap and Tiberius go through, whereas in the other one, Shadow of Napalm and Major Tom get past Disco Inferno. But again, I'm not quite sure who'd face whom here. But I think Mousetrap would be able to beat either Shadow of Napalm or Major Tom, because I don't think their flippers would be able to get underneath Mousetrap quite easily. And Mousetrap is just more manoeuvrable anyway. And I feel like Tiberius could beat either of them anyway as well, for the same reasons. So yeah, Mousetrap and Tiberius meet again in the heat final, and yeah, it would be quite close. I mean, they could get in underneath each other quite easily. Well, I know there was a point where Tiberius did get under Mousetrap in round one at one point and sort of crush it a little bit, but not significantly. But Mousetrap would be able to show it all over the place. Well, I guess it depends who gets to who first, but I'm not sure they could do that much damage to each other. But I think since Mousetrap could get under Tiberius a bit more easily and use the trap more easily, Mousetrap would still win this heat, I think. So then we move on to the next one. Pitbull is finally up and is joined by Mortis. So again, Pitbull faces Suicidal Tendencies and Killertron. But I'm not sure how Pitbull would be redesigned here. It would either be an invertible machine, or the jaw could be converted to a lifter, sort of a lifter jaw type thing. But it's hard to say whether or not it would be completely effective, because I feel like it would still get a bit overwhelmed by Suicidal Tendencies and Killertron, despite Pitbull having a good start, even getting a Munchel Killertron, but I don't know, I just feel like Suicidal Tendencies and Killertron would still prevail here. And the Mortis fight, well, Mortis and Ironor get past Mazakari. And again, it's hard to say who'd face whom here. I don't know. See, it's tricky when a seed doesn't go through. I mean, I feel like suicidal tendencies or Kilotron could beat Iron Ore, especially since it's not running 100%. Mortis could beat Kilotron, but not sure about suicidal tendencies. Yeah, if Mortis faces Kilotron, it would beat it. I mean, suicidal tendencies would have a chance against Mortis if it gets behind or at the front, but I don't know if they face off in the heat final or the last round. I guess he would be more controlled than Mortis. Yeah, it's a really difficult one to call. Because suicidal tendencies is running perfectly fine by round 2. I mean, if Mortis faces suicidal tendencies in round 2, then suicidal tendencies would more likely win. Kilotron would beat Iron Ore, and then the two would face off in the heat final again, and suicidal tendencies would win the heat. If Mortis faced Kilotron, Mortis would beat Kilotron, and suicidal tendencies would beat Iron Ore. But then, by the last round, Mortis would have problems with the arm and the axe, and suicidal tendencies would get an early advantage, and could probably finish Kilotron off. Mortis off quite quickly, before the issues with the tracks come up. So, yeah, it does come down to best guess here, and I feel like suicidal tendencies would win the heat. So, Heat M, Wild Things Heat, and is joined by Berserk 2 this time. So, yeah, Wild Thing and Steel Avenger go through, so do Berserk 2 and the Creature. Wild Thing would beat the Creature, and Steel Avenger would beat Berserk 2, then the heat final plays out the same way, with Wild Thing going through. So Heat N, Behemoth's Heat, and is joined by Pussycat this time. Behemoth and Arnold Terminator would win their fight. Pussycat and Millie Anbug would win theirs. Behemoth beats Millie Anbug. Pussycat beats Arnold A. Terminator, and a meeting like 1 year earlier. And then Pussycat would beat Behemoth. In Heat O, Panic Attack's Heat, and of course Panic Attack is joined by King B3. Panic Attack and Smidsy win their fight. King B3 and Medusa 2000 win theirs. Panic Attack beats Medusa 2000. Smidsy beats King B3 as King B ends up breaking down yet again. Then the heat final plays out the same way. Now we've got Hypnodisc's heat, the last heat, and this time Hypnodisc is joined by Really Big Cheese. Hypnodisc and Razorblade win their fight. Really Big Cheese and Wheelosaurus win theirs. Wheelosaurus stands no chance against Hypnodisc and gets trashed. Really Big Cheese beats Razorblade with no real problems, which means the two seeds meet in the heat final and meet 1 year earlier than normal. This was where Really Big Cheese was having those issues with the flipper and its inner workings, which gives Hypnodisc the ability to be able to beat Really Big Cheese. So we have a few different semi-finalists. So semi-final 1, Chaos 2 would still face Steg 2 and win. Tornado would face a bigger brother. And would more than likely beat bigger brother. See, Razor would face Thermidor 2 and beat it, and then Firestorm 2 would still face Dominator 2, and Dominator 2 would win. Then round 2, Chaos 2 beats Tornado in the same way we saw, and Razor would beat Dominator 2. I know in most cases I've said that a Dominator 2 could beat Razor, but since at this point Dominator 2 doesn't have its wheel guards, it's its most vulnerable part which Razor takes advantage of. Razor wins that. So semi-final 2, Stinger still faces Mousetrap and beats it. Panic Attack faces Suicidal Tendencies, and it's not really a lot Suicidal Tendencies can do against Panic Attack, so I think Panic Attack would still beat it. Hypnodisc would face Splinter still and trash it. Then Wild Thing would face Pussycat, and there isn't much Wild Thing can do against Pussycat, so Pussycat wins that. Then Panic Attack still faces Stinger, and Stinger wins. Then in an interesting turn of events, Hypnodisc and Pussycat face off 1 round earlier, and that sadly plays out the same way, with Pussycat winning and Hypnodisc failing to reach the grand final. So we have a slightly different grand final lineup, only slightly. So Chaos 2, Pussycat and Stinger still go through, but this time Razor is there instead of Hypnodisc. And then Razor would fight Pussycat, and that plays out the same way as in the real timeline. Then Chaos 2 still beats Stinger, but I don't know whether or not there'd be a playoff. It depends how quickly Razor can be repaired. But if it's not able to be repaired in time, then it has to finish 4th, and Stinger still finishes 3rd by default. Otherwise, if there is, I feel like Stinger could beat Razor. I mean, yes, it has that sort of bar thing between the wheels, which Razor could grab a hold of, but it might not be that easily. So with this being the case, Stinger would finish 3rd, and then the grand final plays out the same way. So Chaos 2 would still win the 4th Wars, even if Pitbull, Trident and Blade's big brother still returned. Okay, so for the 5th Wars in this timeline, it's safe to assume that Pitbull, Trident and Blade wouldn't return for that, because the question is, what if they return for Series 4? But there would be some different seeds. I mean, common, and I also messed up earlier when I said about Razor fighting Thermidor 2. It was actually Common Getorix I meant, because Vercingetorix beat Thermidor 2. So the seeds for this fifth wars would be 1 Chaos 2, 2 Pussycat, 3 Stinger, 4 Razor, 5 Hypnodisc, 6 Panic Attack, 7 Firestorm, 8 Free Stakes of Heaven, 9 Wild Thing, Suicidal Tendencies would be seeded 10th, 11 Dominator 2, 12 Tornado, 13 Spawn again, Bigger Brother would be 14th, Bearmore 15th, Common Getter X 16th, Thermidor 2 17th, 18 Splinter, 19 Wheelie Big Cheese, 20 Mini Morg or Mega Morg, 21 Mousetrap, 22 Bulldog Breed, 23 101 and 24 Smithy. That's my best guess anyway, which means that Exterminator, Gemini and Atomic wouldn't be seeded here. But to try and get around this, I'm going to put Stinger Atomic in Stinger's heat, so it's still be in heat B, since yeah, basically Atomic and Bulldog Breed swap seeds. But then I've had an absolute nightmare trying to figure out where Gemini and Exterminator would go, along with Rough Dougal and Immortalis. So either Gemini and Rough Dougal or Exterminator and Immortalis would go in heat I. Since Common Getrix is the 16th seed, we would have to have it fight either Exterminator or Gemini. But we can try and figure out some alternate scenarios here. So basically Heat A plays out the same way, nothing changes. Heat 3, like Stinger and Hippopotamus, basically replace Hypnodisc and Black Widow. In fact, they've swapped heats, basically. So the winners are each. So Stinger beats Hippopotamus, Atomic beats Can Opener, Bulldog Breed beats Juggernaut 2, and Lamsey beats Warwart. So to match the timeline, Bulldog Breed still fights Lamsey and beats it, whereas Atomic and Stinger would face off, and rather shockingly, Atomic would beat Stinger here. So then Atomic and Bulldog Breed would face off in the heat final, and Atomic would win this one, and actually make the semi-finals here. So then Hypnodisc, Black Widow, Mini Morgan, Cat 3 are in heat 5. So Hypnodisc beats Black Widow, Cat 3 beats Mini Morg, S3 beats Plunderbird 5, and General Carnage 2 beats Gazundabot. The Hypnodisc would then face General Carnage and trash it, and Stinger would face Cat 3 and trash it. Then the two spinners would meet in the heat final, and I've already gone over this matchup before, and Hypnodisc would just straight up win. So then we have Firestorm's heat, only this time Splinter and Viper are replacing Gemini and Rough Dougal. So most of these fights play out the same way. Splinter would then go up against Reactor 2 and do quite well against it. It would push it around, but I think Reactor would just end up flipping Splinter over and beating it, seeing as Splinter can't self-right. Then the heat final plays out the same way, with Firestorm 3 winning this one. So then we've got Wild Thing's heat. So Wild Thing beats Trouble and Strife, Alien beats Velociraptor, Napalm beats Warhog, and then, like I said, Common Getter-X would have to fight Exterminator or Gemini. I mean, if it fights Exterminator, then I feel like Exterminator would more likely win this one and go through. So yeah, Wild Thing beats Napalm, and then Exterminator would beat Alien. So then Wild Thing and yeah, at least I think it would. Although Exterminator does break down here. So, I mean, Exterminator would start off strong, but then Alien would probably beat it. And yeah, Wild Thing, I feel like would just beat Alien in the heat final, despite the hammer being an issue. If Common Getter-X fought Gemini, then I think Gemini would put up a fight. They'd flip each other over a few times. I don't know. Or Gemini might struggle, but Common Getter-X would probably win this. And yeah, it would take damage from Alien, I think, but would flip it over. But Wild Thing would beat Common Getter-X on a judge's decision. So yeah, Wild Thing would still win that heat. So now I've got Dominator 2's heat, but Bigger Brother's here instead of Exterminator and Immortalis. So yeah. So yeah, the winners of these rounds being Dominator 2, King Beat Powerworks, Corkscrew, and Bigger Brother. Dominator 2 would beat King Beat Powerworks, Bigger Brother would beat Corkscrew, and then the seeds would meet in the heat final. And I feel like Bigger Brother would beat Dominator 2 here. With no problems whatsoever. So that's one another big difference. To Heat G, Tornado and Spawn again, nothing changes. Spawn again wins that. Then next, H, Suicidal Tendencies Heat. The only difference here is Suicidal Tendencies has to pull out, so Rick will go through to face Axor. It's hard to say when, it would be quite close. I mean, they could flip each other over. You know, Axor actually can self-right. I mean, it doesn't look like it can, but it actually did in the Wildcard Warriors fight with Panic Attack. But yeah, I think because Axor has the hammer as well, it could help it out big time here to win for a judge's decision. So that's what would happen, and then Cross Station beats Beowulf, and in the heat final, there's not much Cross Station can do against Axor really, and Axor would actually win the heat. So yeah, already more successful than Iron Ore. So then, Heat, where are we at? The Heat with Free Stegs and Thermidor 2. And either Gemini and Rough Dougal or Exterminator and Immortalis would be in this heat. I'm not, but yeah, Steg would beat 11, Prize Fighter would beat Thermidor, Tetanus would beat Onslaught, but then I'm not sure who'd go through with here. The winner would either be Gemini or Exterminator, depending. I mean, if it's Gemini, it would face Prize Fighter, and Gemini might struggle to turn Prize Fighter over. Yeah, Prize Fighter would just keep flipping the twins over, and then the twins run out of gas, and Prize Fighter would go through. Or if it's Exterminator, then Exterminator would start strong but then end up breaking down. Either way, Prize Fighter goes through to the heat final, along with 3 Stegs who beats Tetanus. And Prize Fighter Mach 2, I think, would beat 3 Stegs. So now Heat J, Panic Attacks Heat. You've got Really Big Cheese in this one, so the winners of the respective fights being Panic Attack, Really Big Cheese, Tiberius 2, and Major Tom. Panic Attack beats Tiberius 2, of course, and Really Big Cheese easily beats Major Tom, and then again the 2 seeds would face off in the heat final, and Panic Attack would actually struggle against Really Big Cheese, and Really Big Cheese would go through to the semi-finals. So Heat K, Razor's Heat, it's here with Mousetrap. So the winners being Razor, Widow's Revenge, Destructor Bobble, and Mousetrap. And Razor beats Widow's Revenge, Mousetrap would beat Destructor Bobble, and then in the heat final the 2 seeds meet again, and Razor beats Mousetrap. Then last heat, Heat L, Pussycat wins, so nothing changes there. So for the semi-finals, we would have Hypnodisc fight Prize Fighter Mach 2 and beat it. Chaos 2 beats Wild Thing, Razor beats Spawn again. So Wild Thing and Spawn again face off against Prize Fighter. Spawn again, of course, is still having some problems and hasn't fully recovered from the fight with Razor, so it isn't likely to win this one. So otherwise it's close enough to the timeline where Wild Thing fights Prize Fighter and wins for a judge's decision. So then in the next round, Chaos 2 would actually fight Hypnodisc and Razor would fight Wild Thing. That's what would more likely happen. Yeah, the top 2 of Series 3 meeting again, and Hypnodisc would more likely come out on top this time. I mean, Hypnodisc is just in top form, whereas Chaos 2 isn't as strong as it was in Series 3 and 4. So Hypnodisc wins that, while Razor beats Wild Thing, despite the danger of the disc. So in the other semi-final, we've got Axor facing Dominator 2, and Dominator 2 would more likely beat Axor on a judge's decision, and Atomic and Firestorm face off, and because of the issue with the link, Atomic would beat Firestorm, and Really Big Cheese would face off against Pussycat. I know Really Big Cheese does break down by this point, but I feel like despite Pussycat being a slippery customer, Really Big Cheese would be able to flip Pussycat out of the arena before these issues happen. So the loser's melee is Firestorm, Pussycat and Prize Fighter. Wait, sorry, no, not Prize Fighter. Axor. Yeah, Axor isn't really a match for either of the seeded robots, and Firestorm beats them both on a judge's decision and gets back in. So Firestorm would go on to fight Really Big Cheese, while Dominator 2 would face Atomic. Atomic would more than likely win by flipping Dominator 2 out of the arena, while Firestorm is able to hold off Really Big Cheese, and Really Big Cheese does actually end up breaking down here. Oh, wait a minute, it was Bigger Brother that went through, not Dominator 2. I'm sorry. Well, either way, Bigger Brother would beat Axor, but then get flipped out by Atomic. So basically, Atomic is in the grand final instead. So then we would have Hypnodisc fight Atomic, and that plays out the same way as in the original timeline. Razor fights Firestorm and beats that. So Atomic just wouldn't be ready for the playoff purely for the reason that it wasn't able to perform in the second Annihilator of Extreme 2. So Firestorm would get third place again, but by default, and then Hypnodisc and Razor would be in the grand final, and well, we know how that plays out. I've already gone over it multiple times. Hypnodisc wins this one. So we have a slightly different lineup for Series 6 in terms of seeds. Now, it's safe to assume that Prize Fighter Mach 2 doesn't come back, so the seeds would be 1 Hypnodisc, 2 Razor, 3 Firestorm 4 Atomic, Chaos 2 would still be 5th, Wild Thing would be bumped up to 6th, Bigger Brother would be 7th, Spawn again 8th, and Iron Ore would be the 9th seed, Panic Attack would be 10th, and Stinger would still be 11th and Tornado 12th. So now, how I've worked this out is S3 and Iron Ore would swap places, so S3 would be in the same fight as Chaos 2 now, and Atomic would take Dominator 2's heat, but Atomic would replace something. Just got it lost in that one, and would have been the least likely to qualify. Otherwise, their heats and battles stay the same. So Heat A, Hypnodisc wins. Heat B, well, nothing changes, Firestorm wins. So Heat C, so now with Iron Ore replacing, S3 replacing Iron Ore, it and Chaos 2 are the strongest robots here, and they would easily beat Mighty Mouse and Destructosaurus. Danton, Kieran Cross Station with the other fight. So then in round 2, Chaos 2 beats Cross Station as usual. Then S3 and Danton Kier meet a couple of rounds earlier, and it plays out the same way with S3 beating Danton Kier. So already Danton Kier would not qualify, go through to the semi-finals. Then S3 and Chaos 2 meet again. Atomic starts out, Chaos 2 starts out pretty well, flipping S3 all over the place, but then runs into some problems and flips itself on its back, which gives S3 a chance to just tear into Chaos 2. So yeah, with this, Chaos 2 is eliminated and S3 goes through to the semi-finals. In Heat D, that's basically Bigger Brother's heat, nothing changes, Bigger Brother goes through. In E, that's Iron Ore's heat, and replaces S3 here, so it would face Armadillo, Shredder, and Rhubarb. It does quite well here, flipping Shredder and Armadillo with not too many problems. Rhubarb does pretty well. Whether it will get a chance to flip Iron Ore, I'm not quite sure. But I feel like Armadillo would still get stuck and would likely be eliminated here. I don't remember Rhubarb really doing a lot. I don't think it's really able to get to anyone, and ends up breaking down. So yeah, I think Iron Ore 2 is more likely to win, along with Shredder. So I nearly forgot the name. Meanwhile, Sir Chromalot and Alien get through the other round. I think Iron Ore would then beat Sir Chromalot while Shredder beats the Alien. Then in the Heat final, Shredder's not really able to do a lot to Iron Ore 2, let's be honest, so Iron Ore 2 still wins the Heat. So then Heat F, that's Stinger's heat, nothing changes. Heat G, Tornado's heat, nothing changes. Heat 10 is Panic Attack's heat, but again nothing changes. Terahertz wins that one. Then we've got Heat 8, which is Spawn Again's heat. That plays out the same way with Spawn Again winning. Then Heat J, that's Wild Thing's heat. Nothing changes there, Wild Thing wins. And then we've got Atomic's heat, which is also Dominator 2's. But yeah, Atomic and Dominator 2 are easily the strongest robots here, so yeah, they beat Accident and Hydra. And Smitty and Common Getter-X get through the other one. Round 2, Dominator 2 beats Smitty, and Atomic beats Common Getter-X, and then in the Heat final, Atomic just beats Dominator 2, as I said previously by mistake. And then we have Razor's heats, nothing changes there, Razor wins that one. So for the semi-finals, Hypnodisc would face Iron Ore 2 and thrash it. Firestorm 4 beats 13 Black, flipping it over. And S3 and Bigger Brother meet each other, and this plays out pretty much the same way as their Series 5 semi-final fight. So Bigger Brother wins that. Then the losers melee, we've got S3, 13 Black, and Iron Ore 2. I don't think Iron Ore 2 will have much luck here. Might not get a chance to flip 13 Black over. S3 would just slam Iron Ore on the side, and it just completely breaks. Although 13 Black does put up a decent fight against S3. I mean, S3 would damage one of the discs, but I feel like 13 Black would damage one of the wheels of S3. And I don't think S3 would be able to turn 13 Black over. Yeah, it's just a real struggle for S. Yeah, I just think S3 would just struggle. So 13 black gets back in and would go on to face Hypnodisc while Bigger Brother fights Firestorm. I think Hypnodisc would beat 13 black on a judge's decision. I think I went over this in a previous episode. And then Firestorm beats Bigger Brother. In the other semi-final, Tornado would fight Atomic. And Razor would fight Wild Thing and beat it. And Terahertz would beat Spawn again. But again, it's hard to say who'd win between Atomic and Tornado. I know Tornado would probably use the scoop because it usually does against flippers. But even if Atomic does turn Tornado over, I think the sides are still at a good enough angle that Tornado could still push Atomic around. I mean, I'm not sure it would get to a point where Atomic could flip Tornado out of the arena. Yeah, it's tricky, really tricky to work that one out. But I don't know, I mean, Tornado would more than likely win this one, so the loser's melee would be Atomic, Wild Thing, and Spawn again. I mean, Spawn again is just having interference problems. Wild Thing doesn't stand a chance against either of them, so Atomic would beat them and get back in. Although, that being said, even if Atomic did beat Tornado, Tornado would beat the both of them, so it doesn't matter either way. So then, let's see who we got. Razor, Atomic, Tornado, Terahertz. So what would then happen here is Razor would fight Tornado like a couple of rounds early, and Atomic would fight Terahertz. Tornado beats Razor in the same way it happened in the Series 6 Grand Final in the real timeline. And as for Atomic against Terahertz, Atomic might struggle here. Since Terahertz is in top form, I think Terahertz would damage the flipper significantly. Yeah, Terahertz will more than likely win this one. So basically, we have almost the same grand final, but Hypnodisc replaces Razor here. So Hypnodisc would fight Terahertz, and I feel like Hypnodisc would more than likely beat Terahertz, and then and Tornado beats Firestorm in the same way it did in the real timeline. So we had the same playoff again, but I think Terahertz still comes off being the worst for wear because it would probably break down here. And then the grand final, yeah, this plays out the same way as in the real timeline. Tornado beats Hypnodisc, and Tornado becomes the UK champion. So in this timeline, Razor never becomes the UK champion. In this timeline, Iron Ore 2.1 would be seeded, since it is a semi-finalist once again, and would be seeded instead of Ming. and they basically swap places in their heats, basically. But, I need to just look how that would go. Okay, actually I'm mistaken, because Danton Kia doesn't make the semi-finals in this timeline, so yeah, Iron Ore 2.1 would be seeded instead of Danton Kia. What would happen is Danton Kia, King B, Powerworks, Hassocks and Rick would be in Bigger Brothers heat, while hold on. Oh yeah, well, IG88, Stag, Tomahawk and Scorpion would be in Iron Ore's heat. So here's how it would go, assuming Pussycat is in heat A and Tornado's in heat E. So first two heats of Series 7, nothing changes. For heat C, 13 Black's heat is here instead of D. Gravity wins that one. Then heat D, we've got Iron Ore's heat, so yeah, Iron Ore and Hammerhead 2 would win their fight, of course, while IG88 and Scorpion get through theirs. I think Iron Ore would just about be able to beat Scorpion, whereas IG88 would beat a Hammerhead, and in the heat final Iron Ore would defeat IG88 by simply flipping it over. Then nothing changes for throughout the rest of the heats until a heat O, Bigger Brothers heat. So Bigger Brother and Typhoon 2 win one fight, Danton Kia and King B get through the other. So then Bigger Brother would then fight, I guess either probably Danton Kia, and in a flipper frenzy, Danton Kia wins that one. While Typhoon 2 beats King B, and then Typhoon 2 defeats Danton Kia in the heat final. I mean, to be honest, Typhoon 2 is winning that heat regardless. So now, the only difference is that Iron Ore 2.1 would face Gravity in the series semi-finals of a semi-final 1, and Gravity would win. Otherwise, Series 7 plays out the same way with Typhoon 2 winning. And that is all basically what would happen if Pitbull, Trident and Blade did return for Wars the Fourth Wars. So Chaos 2 would still win Series 4, Hypnodisc would win Series 5 instead of Razor, Tornado would still win Series 6, and Typhoon 2 would still win Series 7, and Razor never becomes the UK champion, much to the dismay of Razor fans. And yeah, that does that. Thanks for watching.